This is the Extreme Stewardship Podcast, where we explore anything and everything that gets us better at making things good and good at making things better. Part of getting better at making things good and good at making things better is getting better at using the tools that God has provided to help us do our work. One of those tools is money. So this is the fourth episode in a little mini-series I'm doing on money, and more specifically, how our theology of money can be shaped by our theology of work. The first episode in this series was about the fact that money is both a good gift from God and a great temptation because it is so often the means by which we worship our many idols. The second episode was about the fact that the amount of money we have is not God's primary concern. Rather, it is a combination of our heart posture toward money and our practical stewardship of money. The third episode was about how money can serve as fruit, which means resources to be enjoyed now, seed, which means resources to be invested for later, or weeds, which means it makes things worse rather than better. And now this fourth episode about the theology of money is going to suggest some priorities when it comes to how we use our money. The foundation underneath these priorities is the fact that money is a tool. Tools are good gifts from God to use, whose purpose is to enhance our creation improvement enterprise. My work is better when I have tools and use them appropriately for that work, like when I use a screwdriver to assemble a bookcase, a weed whacker to care for my lawn, or a computer to write this podcast episode. Money is a tool like those tools. Its purpose is to help us improve our improvement of creation. So these three priorities are given to us by God in order to do just that. Priority number one. When it comes to using our money, the first thing we need to prioritize is proximity. Prioritizing proximity means my money goes first to those who are nearest to me. Not exclusively, but first. And not because I'm ethnocentric or selfish, but because it is a simple fact that energy dissipates over distance. The more distance money has to travel, the less effective it will be. Money is a tool to improve creation, and tools are the most useful for improving creation where access to what needs improvement is greatest. As an embodied creature, I am by design limited by space. I am here and not there. Given that my location in space and in proximity to some things more than others was God's idea, I take it as His idea also that my responsibility for the creation around me begins with the creation around me that is in proximity to me. My family, my neighbors, my community. I start there. I don't end there. This isn't isolationism, but I start there in recognition of the fact that God put me precisely where I am. Priority number two, prioritize necessity. Prioritizing necessity means my money goes first to those who are greatest in need, not exclusively, but first. And not because the goal is equality of outcome, but because the goal is the basic dignity and well-being of all those made in the image of God. We have so that we can share with those who do not have. Money is a tool to improve creation, and tools are the most useful for improving creation where the need for improvement is greatest. Now, there are needs everywhere. Some needs are more urgent than others. Some needs are more dire than others. Beyond food and clothing and shelter and community, most needs are subjective. The line between need and want is blurry much of the time. So what to do? I do not think prioritizing necessity means only putting money into the most essential and most urgent needs. I do think it starts with those things, particularly alongside honoring proximity. If my family doesn't have food, clothing, and shelter, I shouldn't be spending money on anything else until they do. And then from there, it takes a lot of wisdom and intentional rate ordering and careful consideration of what sorts of purchases or donations are meeting our various kinds of needs. Priority number three, prioritize probability. Prioritizing probability means my money goes first to those who will do the most good with it. Not exclusively, but first. And not because the goal is simply for my money to make more money, but because I desire for my money to be effective for creation improvement, even when someone else is using it to do that work. Money is a tool to improve creation, and tools are the most useful for improving creation, where they will continue to be used to improve creation long after they have left our hands. The original job that God gave us way back in Genesis 1 involved two things: improve creation and have kids so they can improve creation. Creation improvement has always been a multi-generational undertaking. Sometimes that's literal biological generations, like me to my kids. Sometimes it's professional generations, like me to my students. I am partially responsible for how my students use what I teach them. I am partially responsible for how my money gets used by the person to whom I give it. So I prioritize probability by putting my money where it is most probable to be used by others to do the most good. Prioritize proximity, prioritize necessity, prioritize probability. In case you're wondering where I'm getting all this, these three priorities are biblical. In fact, there's one biblical text that says all of them. In 1 Timothy 5, Paul is giving some instructions about how to take care of widows. He starts by saying that the church should honor widows who are really widows. But if a widow has kids or grandkids, those kids or grandkids should put their piety on display by taking care of their ancestors. So we prioritize necessity by caring for the kinds of people who can't care for themselves and who don't have anyone else standing by to care for them. But we also prioritize proximity by taking care of our own parents or grandparents. And this, Paul says at the end of the verse, is pleasing to God. Then Paul distinguishes between widows who are truly in need and set their hope on God, and widows who are living it up. And he says that the widow who is indulging herself and living the self-centered good life and blowing somebody else's money on whatever, that widow is dead even while she lives. Should the church be supporting her lifestyle? Not a chance. So we're prioritizing necessity because we're talking about widows. We're prioritizing proximity because the biological family is supposed to step in before the church does. And we're prioritizing probability because if that money is just going to burn a hole in her pocket, we're not giving it to her in the first place. All three priorities in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 through 7. And if we didn't get it the first time, Paul's going to name all three priorities again in the very next paragraph. Verse 8, anyone who doesn't provide for their own household, especially for members of their own family, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. There's a lot here. I need a whole episode just on this verse, but the basic point is clear. Prioritize proximity. If my money is taking care of people outside my family, but not taking care of my family, I'm doing it wrong. Prioritize proximity. In verses 9 through 14, Paul says, choose very carefully which widows you take care of. Prioritize the ones who have shown themselves to be faithful stewards of the resources they once had. When Paul says, take care of the widows who have raised kids, who have shown hospitality, who have cared for those who suffer and done all kinds of good work, the point is this: when they were married and someone else was providing the income, what did they do with their time, since that time didn't have to be devoted to making money? Did they do stuff that matters or stuff that doesn't? Did they use that time for themselves or for others? In the care of widows, prioritize those who have a track record of using their time and energy to serve rather than to self-indulge. In other words, prioritize probability. And then finally, verse 16. If any believing woman has widows in her care, she ought to keep caring for them so the church can focus on the widows who are truly in need. One more time, prioritize proximity because it's the job of the family to take care of the family, and prioritize necessity, which means the church begins with those who really don't have any other option. Three priorities in our use of money as a tool with which we improve creation. Prioritize proximity, which means beginning our distribution of money with those who are closest to us. Prioritize necessity, which means beginning our distribution of money with those who need it most. And prioritize probability, which means beginning our distribution of money with those who are most likely to use it well. And that, I think, is all I want to say about that. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Extreme Stewardship Podcast. My name is Michael Kibbe, and I teach Bible and theology at Great Northern University in Spokane, Washington. My behind-the-scenes partner in this endeavor is Ben Kibbe, CEO of Kibbe Consulting in Columbiana, Ohio. Our editor-in-chief is Liam Olmsted. Art comes from Leah Leanhoutz, and music is provided by Dave Murray of Deridoon Guitars. If this podcast has been useful or challenging to you, shoot us an email, extremestewards@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you think it might be useful or challenging to anyone else, well, you know what to do. Ultimately, we hope that listening to this podcast has helped you get better at making things good and good at making things better.